97% of students in colleges that use RespectX say, I would be willing to make a report on RespectX if I saw or experienced something that wasn't okay. But
Wow, that's
here's the
amazing.
better number. Here's the better number. 98% say, I believe that my college leaders are serious about my safety and my respect.
Oh, beautiful.
And I think to myself, Josh, can you imagine a vice chancellor in this country who would love to be able to stand up and present that set of numbers for their university?
Welcome to today's episode of Better Student Leaders. Today, I'm joined by Sally Calder, CEO and co-founder of RespectX. I thought I'd start off today a little bit differently and just read directly from the RespectX website before asking Sally to tell us a little bit about how her and her co-founder Shay met. The last two paragraphs in particular is what grabbed my attention and one of the reasons I was so excited to speak with Sally. The website says, collectively, Sally and Shay have over 60 years of experience consulting to clients across the globe on building workplaces that support people to do their best. The inception of an easy and safe reporting experience that prevents sexual harassment, bullying, and discrimination was underpinned by a core belief: if you don't know about it, you can't stop it. So today, we're going to talk about it and hopefully find out some ways to stop it. Sally,
Oh,
thank you so much for joining me.
thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited to have you on. Let's go into the founder story. Everyone loves to know, especially when we're doing work in wicked social problems that don't have easy solutions, to find someone else to go on a journey with to solve a big problem in the world is rare and it's
Yeah.
special. And it sounds like you've met someone really special in
Mhm.
Shay. How did you two meet and how did you decide to work together?
I'll tell you the answers to those two questions, and I'll tell you the answer to the third question, which is why this topic. So Shay and I worked together at KPMG. Shay had been in the New York office, and she was the chief of staff to the global chair of KPMG. And I was in the Melbourne People and Change. I was leading the Melbourne People and Change team, and I was the national lead partner for culture, diversity, and inclusion. So I have worked in and around the topic of culture and how do you make safe, fantastic, joyful cultures that perform well for most of my career. Shay was coming back to Australia and she was really given an opportunity to choose where she wanted to work, and she met me and she decided she wanted to join our team. So I think that was, gosh, maybe nearly 13 or 14 years ago now. So Shay came back to Australia, worked in our team, and then the story of how did we actually start working together on this issue of which is all about making workplaces safer and more respectful is a really cool story. And if you bear with me, I'll tell it. But about, I think, probably 12 years ago, I was sitting at a dinner at the War Memorial, and I was sitting next to the then Secretary of the Department of Defence, a really famous Australian bureaucrat called Dennis Richardson. And Defence had invested heavily in a program called Pathways to Change for many years. And it was really designed to try and conquer gender-based violence in defence. And that when we were having dinner, that program, Pathways to Change, had been running for 5 years. At the same time, a Royal Commission into veteran suicide had just been announced. And I asked Mr. Richardson whether or not he felt Pathways to Change had actually made an impact on the culture of defence. And he said, you know what? No, I think it's become a bit of a tick box exercise, which is why he's such a famous bureaucrat, because he was so brutally honest and candid. And he said to me, if you think that you can think of anything more creative that would make a difference, go away and do your cleverest thinking and come back and see me in a month, which is not an invitation you get very often and not one that you're going to miss. And this was, you've got to remember, this was 12 years ago, Josh. So I went back to KPMG, started chatting with Shay, and I started talking to our data scientists. We had a great team of people working in sort of data science. And I started to ask a question, how, and this is the language we used back then, how could machine learning, that was the language we used, AI wasn't invented then, how could machine learning help us make better predictions about how people are going to respond if they're on deployment? who might be somebody who might become a problem person in an organisation, what it is that people need in terms of development to do and be their best. And we started on this really big journey about very early stage use of data and analytics to drive insights. And we worked on that for a couple of years and had huge interest from every single chief of every service, the AFP, a whole range of organisations. But it was early days, Josh. This is a long time ago. This was very exploratory back then. And so it just really didn't go anywhere. But the dream never left Shay. And I think what happened for us, and this is a real life story, about maybe 4 years ago, the Brittany Higgins story had broken in Parliament House. And my very first job out of university was at Federal Parliament. I was a research assistant in Federal Parliament to a shadow minister. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, 38 years later, nothing has changed. And Shay had left KPMG at that point, and I rang her and said, you know what? I think you and I could build something that could help people here. Let's do it. So we built RespectX. I left KPMG. We created RespectX, and here we are. We've been going now hard for 2.5 years. We built it ourselves. And I do remember thinking to myself when I first arrived, gosh, this is a bit of a cowboy rodeo happening right here. Because
Yeah.
what happens, and it's no different, Josh, to any other. Think about fly in, fly out mining organisations. Think about any organisation where people go away on deployment or go away to work, or where people have this sort of sense that we're a little bit removed from the rules of normal behaviour. And it doesn't even have to be that extreme, really. But I do remember somebody saying to me very early on, the rules are pretty clear. You need to always lock the door behind you, always travel in a pack, never be the drunkest person in the room,
Wow.
and make sure that you can look after yourself and be aware that things happen, and what goes on till stays on. I think a lot of that
Wow.
narrative was that was the narrative that was replayed throughout the Brittany Higgins story, if you recall.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I meant, that culturally not much had changed at all. And also that not just culturally, but systemically, one of the issues when that story broke was there was no safe way for people to make a report if something happened to them in Parliament House. And certainly there wasn't 38 years ago. One would have assumed that there would have been 38 years later. So
Yes.
I think it's more around, if you think about what we know from the data and the statistics about workplace-based sexual harassment and assault, gender-based violence, but also just workplace psychosocial harm, the data's irrefutable. We know that still today, 1 in 3 Australian workers, I'm talking about workplaces now, not universities, we can go to that data in a moment, 1 in 3 Australian workers will experience some form of psychosocial harm at work every year as a result of bullying or discrimination or sexual harassment or assault. And the number of people who will make a report about that is 18%. 10 years ago, the number of people who made a report was 17%. So when I say, if you don't know about it, you can't stop it, that's what I mean. If we have really only moved reporting rates 1 percentage point in this country, which has some of the strictest legislative frameworks around respect at work, WHS legislation, so on and so forth, then clearly we have some work to do. And that's the work that RespectX wants to do and wants to support leaders to do.
Yes. You mentioned earlier on there was a third question, which is why this work and why this work. So for you and Shay, many issues that you could work towards and put your minds together, but you've chosen this one. May I ask why?
It's an important question, because going back to the beginning of the story, our project name back in those days was Genesis, and we were really looking at how we could use machine learning to pull data from multiple sources to solve all sorts of problems. And one of the critical questions for Shay and I was, what's the problem that we really want to solve? What is it that means the most to us? What are we deeply passionate about? And what we were deeply passionate about was making work and university a safe place for everyone where everyone can do and be their best. And I've always had this really big belief that, yes, work should be a place where you can earn money and be rewarded for your effort and look after your family and provide yourself with financial security. But it should be more than that. It should be a place that enriches you and where you can find some joy and actually become the best version of yourself. I don't think that's idealistic. I don't think it's too much for us to ask. Most of us are going to spend most of our life at work, so it needs to give us more than just financial return. It needs to fuel our souls and our spirits.
Absolutely.
So we had to think about what is the problem we really want to fix? And the problem we really wanted to fix was psychosocial harm, like particularly people feeling unsafe and disrespected at work because they were being bullied or discriminated or racially vilified or sexually harassed and assaulted. And I think for me personally, I shared with you the fact that I had worked in Parliament House. Before I went to KPMG, I spent 20 years working in the public sector, and I worked in the service delivery end. My first 10 years was spent in child protection. And when you run child protection services and the impact on children and their families as a result of things that no one should ever have to experience, and then you run rape crisis centres, and then you run domestic violence refuges, you become acutely aware that there is not a level playing field, and that people who experience any kind of violence or harm, no matter how minor, no matter how extreme, don't get the sort of protections that they deserve, and they don't get the kind of life trajectory that they should be able to assume. And I'm the mother of 5 children. Shay's the mother of 4. I don't want that for my children. I don't want it for anybody else's children. We really wanted to just get rid of the crap that goes on in organisations, get rid of that. So that no one wants to go and actually have to fight to survive. You just want to go and do and be your best, go home and be with your family. That's what we wanted to do.
Of course. So if we keep that as the North Star, people being able to go into workplaces, I know in the university space, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but residential colleges is a really big area. We've seen so many lean into your work at RespectX. I've quoted you and screenshot you the recordings of multiple times when I've referred to things that you've said when in doing college presentations. I think you just have a way of cutting through the nonsense that is so unique and so powerful. If that's the North Star, that like everyone doing their best work, their best leadership, being the best version of themselves, RespectX is a solution to a very particular problem. And I'd love to know when someone reaches out to you or engages RespectX, and no doubt it can solve a number of problems. When someone reaches out to you and engages you, Shane, the team at RespectX, what are they trying to solve? How do they describe it or talk about it? What is that conversation like where you go, oh, I hear you, I feel you, I see you, we can definitely help? But where might someone be even if they're listening right now and go, oh, actually, I think we have that problem too?
Yeah. Let's start with university colleges, can we?
Of
Because
course.
I have to tell you, Shay and I have been overwhelmed by the enthusiasm and the real commitment that college leaders have shown in just embracing RespectX, grabbing it and running with it. I think they are the standout example of really purpose-based leaders who absolutely want to solve once and for all the problem of people not being safe and respected in their organisations. And it's been so joyful, it's been so validating, because you spend a lot of your time trying to convince leaders that this is the right thing to do. We have not had to convince college leaders. They're knocking the door down. So I want to talk about them. The first thing I would say and actually it's a very interesting case study, because at the same time that we're talking with college leaders, we're also talking to a bunch of university leaders, and the differences are quite stark. So let's talk about college leaders. The first thing is, universally, college leaders will say to Shay and I, my number one job, and the reason I do this work, is for the well-being of my students and to make sure that they have a transformative experience at university. That is my vocation. If that's the thing that drives you, if that's your vocational purpose, if that's what you get up for every day, we are off to a rocketing start, right? Because they're looking for solutions that can help them with that. So that's the first thing. Their number one driver for these people is the well-being of their students. Number two, there is no denial that the problem exists. So they are not defending, oh, we've got this, we've got systems in place. If something was going on here, we'd know about it. We've worked very hard on this for 5 years. Just we've reviewed all of our policies. No, there is no defensiveness about we've got this, and there's no denial that the problem exists. And that is a really big defining difference of these leaders. They know there's a problem. And they know that even though they've done a great job, they're really open to the fact that they could do better. And they're very open to new ways of doing things. I think the third thing is they are deeply collaborative across their sector. So I think the RespectX experience was that we were introduced into 2 of the colleges at the University of Sydney last November, actually, 12 months ago, almost to the day, in fact. And those colleges were impressed and excited by the potential of what RespectX could support them to do, that they told all their mates. So,
Yeah, colleges are good like that. They're very, when you say collaborative, like they're actually collaborative. They're on weekly meetings talking to one another and they love the good stuff.
they share their experience, they share
Yeah.
their stories, they tell one another what's working. And so that was really the driver for just that really rapid take up. And I think RespectX is now in, I think, 32 independent colleges.
Congratulations.
The University of Queensland owned and operated university accommodation, and some of the bigger PBSAs and other universities are starting to talk to us about their accommodation. So that the first thing is their whole purpose is student wellbeing, no denial, no defensiveness, absolute openness to new and better ways always, deeply collaborative across the sector. And I think the third thing is I think they listen to their students. In all of the colleges in which we've operated, the college leaders have said, oh, we want to consult with our leaders, our student leaders about this. We'll want them to be across this role in the kind of the execution of RespectX. We want to see what they think about it. So they're actually engaging with their leaders. And I think that the sixth thing, which I've only really recently become fully aware of, Josh, is that the role of a student leader, like a residential leader in a college, that is a really important and critical role. And we've got some colleges where there might be 20 student leaders who are trained in how to, take a disclosure, use RespectX, and have got an ongoing support and monitoring role. So these student leaders are, when they work with us, they're getting really precise skills that they're going to be able to take throughout their careers. So I think that's a really big thing, that there is this absolute commitment to student engagement. So those 6 things, if I could say they were the defining characteristics of every sector, I'd be a very happy woman. And I think that our other higher education providers, our vice chancellors, could learn a lot from the role modelling from our college leaders.
Yes. I'm conscious we've spoken a lot about RespectX, but maybe not walked someone through what exactly it is, exactly how it works. And I'd love to then tie that in a bow. You've had RespectX in colleges now for over a year. I know you mentioned it's all about data and the insights and the intelligence from that. So I'd love to know if there's anything that you can share. Obviously not specific to a particular client, but
Aggregate data.
yeah, what does it look like? So someone says, "All right, I want to have RespectX." Wait, what is it? What is it? An app? Is it what is it? How does it work? And then what have you learned or what have you seen for the ones who've used it for an extended period of time?
Well, these are 2 very big questions, and I normally take, in fact, I've just been on a call with another higher education organisation, spending 45 minutes taking them through a demonstration of RespectX, but I'll do it very quickly for you.
Yeah, you're right.
The first thing is RespectX is a platform-based solution that looks and feels like an app. So you can see the icon there on the front screen of my phone. And when I hit that icon, it takes me straight into a reporting page. And it says, if you experience or witness something that doesn't feel right, say something. And you can see you've got 3 options. You can make an informal report, a formal report, or you can just put your hand up and get wellbeing support. And most people will go through the process of wanting to make an informal report. So the reason why people love RespectX, students and staff love RespectX, is because it is so simple and it is so safe. You are literally putting a reporting solution into the hands of every single one of your people, and you can make an informal report banner, and you can make a fully anonymous report about anything that you've experienced or seen in less than 20 seconds.
So is the informal, maybe just defining that term, does informal mean anonymous?
Informal means anonymous, and
Okay.
informal means I don't want a disciplinary outcome here. I don't want to go through a formal investigation. I just want to let you know that I've seen something or I've experienced something that is not okay, and I'd like it to stop. And the sorts of things that, and 80% of the complaints, remember that there are three ways that you can use RespectX: make an informal anonymous report, a formal report, or put your hand up for wellbeing support. So that can be about anything. It could be drug and alcohol, domestic violence, financial pressure, anything. I'm not okay and I want some help. And that, again, that
Wow.
would be an anonymous request. But of the complaints, 80% that come through are informal. And this just validates what we know, which is most people don't want to go through a formal report and a formal investigation. Investigations are traumatic.
That speaks to, sorry to interrupt you there, Sally, but that almost marries up perfectly with the data that you shared before, right? If it's gone from 17 to 18%, if 18% of people report it, that's pretty close to 20% that use the formal report. That's almost, but what you're saying is, tell me if I'm off base, it sounds like what you're saying is you're
Yeah.
now capturing the 80%. Am I getting
That,
you?
that weren't making reports before. Exactly. So
Exactly.
you're exactly right. So if there is
Wow.
not if there is not an anonymous informal option, people have got no choice but to either leave an organization or they get to breaking point, and that's when they hit the big red button and kick off.
You lose a great person.
Let's have an investigation. Let's actually get investigations are traumatic for the person who's reported. They're traumatic for the person who's been named as a possible offender. They're traumatic for the organisation conducting them. Nobody wins when you get to that point. So if there's an option for people to put their hand up early before you get to that escalation, why wouldn't you do it? Now, at most universities in Australia at the moment, and this is I find this bizarre and frustrating and disappointing on so many levels. But at most universities in Australia, if you want to go and make an anonymous disclosure, when you do that, you'll get a message that says, please be aware that if you make an anonymous disclosure, there's not a lot we can do and we can't contact you to tell you what we've done. It's 2025. And we have contemporary digital technology where you can have a whole conversation anonymously with somebody you've got no idea who they are. That's what two-way anonymous communication looks like. 32 colleges in this country have that technology. Why are universities still accepting that it is okay to say, if you make an anonymous report, there's very little we can do and we can't contact you? Now, the natural question at that point is, why would you bother to make an anonymous report, Josh, to your point? So if you look at the National Student Safety Survey from 2021, you'll see that I think it was 8% of people made a report, and universities will quote how many reports they got. What they're not capturing are all the incidents that did happen, because we know what the prevalence is, where people didn't make a report because there was no point.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, the whole idea behind RespectX is make it super safe and super simple for people to put their hand up early when things start to not be okay, so organisations can get in and resolve those issues. And rather than running cultural change programs across their whole organisation, hoping that the program is relevant to someone, why wouldn't you actually get data to tell you exactly what was going on to the behaviour in your organisation, to whom, where, and in what circumstances, so you could forensically target your prevention effort where it's required.
Mm.
And, the people in your organisation who are doing the right thing, leave them alone. Let them go. Sorry, that was a bit of an inarticulate
No,
rant.
it was
Um,
great. Sally, you're incredibly articulate. You're articulate. You know that. What about for someone who then says, because I want to get to the data bit, but I think there's a bridge there.
mm,
Okay, I'm on the receiving end. I'm a staff member. I'm getting all these anonymous reports now. And I want to, but before I even pretend to play devil's advocate here, I think it's just with the topic, it's so important. I say out loud, I'm a huge fan and advocate for this work, championing you. That's why I want this message to go out there. But
mm,
purely for the sake of the audience, to play devil's advocate,
yeah.
that means, Sally, if I'm a leader of a resident, I'm going to get all these messages. One, that sounds like more work. Two, if I can't put someone's name to it, what if they just deny it? I'm sure these are the very common FAQs.
Yeah.
Walk me through that so no one is even thinking for a second that this is too much work or it's not going to lead to something, because I know that's not the case.
You've tapped some of the really big myths. We'll be inundated with reports. We won't be able to cope with the workload. People will make vexatious reports because we make it so easy. We won't be able to do anything because we won't have any real data. So let me take you through that. Thank you for that great question. The back end of RespectX, the case management piece, because all of those issues, they're real and they're live and they're real fears for people because everyone's busy. People are terrified of getting it wrong. They're terrified of ending up at the student ombudsman or Fair Work Commission or in some kind of a litigation and being shown that they've done the wrong thing. So people are justifiably nervous. So what we wanted to do, in the same way that we wanted to make it safe and simple for people to make a report, we want to make it safe and simple for people to receive and respond to reports. So when we were building RespectX, we put as much thought and care into the case manager experience as we did to the reporter experience. And it's worth at this point, Josh, just sharing with you the 5 design principles that underpinned the build that Shay and I did. So the first one was simplicity. Second one was safety. Third one was compassion. That's our summary for victim-centric trauma-informed. Fourth one was compliance, because there is so much ever-changing legislation and regulation. Fifth one was common sense. And those 5 design principles, they're the criteria that we use now whenever we're updating, refining, doing new builds on the platform. We come back to those 5 principles all the time. So how that applies for case managers is that, number one, it's a very simple guided workflow. It's been built on global best practice. It's been built on principles of victim centricity and trauma-informed approaches. It's compliant with it takes all the guesswork out for people. And it really is, it's almost like a follow the bouncing ball. If you can read this piece and do that action, it will guide you through how to respond and you'll be fine. So it becomes quite a quick process. In terms of the other issues, let me tell you what happens. When we go into an organisation, reporting goes up. Reporting definitely goes up, and that's a good thing, because we now know, and I'll share this in a moment, we now know what the actual prevalence of bad behaviour in colleges is. So you want your reporting to match what your prevalence actually is. So that's the first thing. Reporting will go up. And it will stay up at that rate for about 3 or 4 months, and then it will start to come down. Now, we're going to rerun the prevalence survey for all of the colleges that have been with us for 12 months next February, and we'll be able to publish the results of that. But we know that the reason it starts to go down is because behaviour starts to change. So people work out very quickly that it's very easy for people to put their hand up and make an anonymous report. And if they see their organisation take action, and if they see that the same rules are applied to everyone, it changes behaviour. And some colleges have done an amazing job at really implementing RespectX and changing the conversation overnight in their college. And if we get time, I'll give you a little case study about that. So that's the first thing. Reporting goes up, but then it levels off. The second thing is the process is really guided and simple, and it's super quick because you're not having to work it out or invent it from scratch. You're just following the process. The third thing is there is a lot of concern around vexatious reports. If we make it easy, people will make mischievous reports. Now, globally, the data on this is 4%. So 4% of all reports that are received on traditional reporting platforms are vexatious. I can tell you that in 2.5 years of running RespectX across so many different sectors in this country with hundreds of thousands of reporters, our case managers have not reported one single vexatious report. We have had 1 or 2 examples of user error where a reporter has made a report to the wrong organisation by mistake, but there has not been a single vexatious report received. So I think that's just a little bit of I think that's a bit of a myth.
Yeah.
What are the other reasons people don't want to? Oh, I think there's a really big hidden fear, Josh. I think the thing that you haven't asked, but I think this is the biggest issue. I think many leaders don't really want to know the actual prevalence. Because if they know what the actual prevalence of sexual harassment, for example, is, or sexual assault or bullying or racial vilification is in their organisation, if they actually know the real number, then they have to do something about it. Now, not for a moment am I suggesting that university leaders, higher education leaders aren't absolutely committed to safe and respectful campuses. Of course they are. But if you get hard numbers in front of you which says this is our prevalence, then you have to really think about where does this sit on my priority list and how am I personally driving this? And I think that's challenging for people.
Absolutely. It's one of the lines in our workshops, like 'cause we work with the leaders who at a student level, but who are deciding whether to bring platforms in and whatnot. And one of the quotes I see most in the feedback surveys is the most popular thing that students have learned. Like, what is the top takeaway? Is this quote they say all the time, and that is, "You cannot solve a problem that you are not willing to have."
Yeah.
And can the old A line of, "You can name it, you can tame it," but if you can't name it or you don't want to look at it, that's a
Yeah.
big one.
I love that. You can't solve a problem that you're not willing to have. I love that. I think it's a very big and unspoken reality in Australia at the moment in relation to the National Code. And it's why the example that's provided by the college leaders is so worthy of celebration, because they're just not in that space at all.
Yeah.
Can I share some data?
Love data. I could spend this whole time talking about data. I'm such a nerd for data, Sally. Go as deep as you can.
One of the things my amazing co-founder, Dr. Shane Hewitt, is, the data and analytics nerd in our organization and is so excited by what we're collecting, because what we really want to do, our really big goal here is there is really no global evidence to show what works, what specific interventions work in what contexts to prevent specific behaviours. So when people make a report on RespectX, we guide them to be very granular about the behaviour, the very specific behaviour they've experienced. And then we match when an action is assigned, an intervention is assigned, we can track the success of that action and through the only measure that matters, which is to what extent does the reporter feel safe and trusted as a result of what's happened. So the ability to create that body of evidence and really get hard data to drive prevention is the thing that we're excited about. But when we go into any organisation, the very first thing that we do is, as part of the onboarding process, which is sort of 5 or 6 short videos that people watch on their phone, and as part of watching those videos, they're asked a number of questions. And so embedded into the onboard are prevalence questions and some cultural metrics. So when an organisation's onboarded, within a week, we give them a training report which says, here's your actual prevalence of sexual harassment and assault, bullying, discrimination.
Wow.
How many people made a report? If they didn't report, why didn't they report? And then we ask them 4 questions. And the questions are, how confident are you using the RespectX platform? How willing would you be to make a report on RespectX if something happened to you? How serious do you think your leaders are about your safety and your respect?
It's a big
And
one.
do you think RespectX would make a difference to everyday behaviour, right? Now, I want to share with you the aggregate data from the college sector, the independent college sector. Now, why higher education leaders think they need to wait till 2026 for the National Student Survey data, which might have an 11% participation rate. And I don't know why people even are prepared to accept that, when college leaders, the 32 college leaders have got their individual prevalence data today. They can benchmark it across the sector, and they can track it in real time. Bang, 30 seconds, push of a button. But I can tell you what the aggregate data is across the college sector. The aggregate prevalence of sexual harassment and sexual assault in independent colleges is 10%. In the 2021 National Student Survey, the number that was reported for student accommodation was 19%, but that lumped all accommodation types together. So PBSAs, independent colleges, university owned and operated, and other forms. In independent colleges, the actual number is 10%. The rate of bullying is 6% and the rate of discrimination is 5%. That's data that the NSSS has never collected. The number of people who made a report was of the 21% of people who experienced harm, 21%, only 8% made a report. That's on par with what the NSSS reported. What is super interesting about this is that there is the reasons why the other 82% did, sorry, the other 92%,
92.
92, why they didn't make a report. It's not that they didn't trust that their college leaders would do the right thing if they told them that something had happened. In fact, 82% of them said, we trust that our leaders would have done the right thing if we told them what had happened. The reasons they didn't report was, number one, it wasn't simple enough. They couldn't get their phone and go bang, right? They didn't know where to report. They didn't know how to do it. They didn't know how to find the thing. And number two, it wasn't anonymous. So anyone who thinks, oh, our students would tell us if something was going on, dream on, no, they won't, right?
80% of them won't.
More. So it wasn't simple enough and it wasn't anonymous. So it's not that complicated. In terms of those cultural metrics, so they've got the aggregate data now and each of them can benchmark their own individual data. But the
Brilliant.
cultural metrics are super important, right? 98% of students say, I'd be willing to make a report on RespectX if something happened to me, if I saw something happen. That's compared to 8%
Eight.
that we did previously.
Say that again, Sally, because that's incredible and should be carved in marble.
97% of students in colleges that use RespectX say, I would be willing to make a report on RespectX if I saw or experienced something that wasn't okay. But
Wow. That's
here's
amazing.
the better number. Here's the better number.
Tell me.
98% say, I believe that my college leaders are serious about my safety and my respect.
Oh, beautiful.
And I think to myself, Josh, can you imagine a vice chancellor in this country who would love to be able to stand up and present that set of numbers for their university? 97% of my students feel confident and willing to make a report if something happens, and 98% believe that we're serious.
So you're telling me that 90%, 98% of students believe that the leaders would actually stick up for them, they'll do something about it, they want to do it. And 97% of them say, I would do it if I just had a thing on my phone that made it simple and anonymous. So we're simplicity and we're anonymity away from going from 8% to 97%, which then means for the repeat, because we know all the data, how many times things happen by repeat offenders, by someone having an early intervention, they've done a bad thing, they can get the support they need. The victims are then guided so it doesn't happen multiple times, because we know it happens multiple times to some people. All of those benefits are downstream from someone having a simple and anonymous reporting tool on their phone that they use 400 times a day.
So
It's incredible.
anybody who thinks that this isn't in the hand
Yeah.
of almost every Australian every minute of
Oh,
the day, particularly if you're under the age of 35, this is just how people engage now. This is how people, in fact, this is how students expect to be able to engage. They expect
yeah,
to be able to engage.
that.
And I think that's super important. And I think it just blows my mind that we've got this thing that Shay and I say all the time, which is the problem is really complex, but the solution doesn't have to be. The solution can be really simple. The technology exists. It's simple to use. People trust it and it works. So there's no reason to wait. There's no reason to get a committee to consider your response to the national code. This is not about compliance. This is such an opportunity for leaders to really make a stand on something that they care about and that matters to them. And hopefully it matters to them. Certainly matters to their students. So I think the really big question is, what is it that you want to take a stand on? And if it is, then be prepared to take that stand, because you can change it. You can change it quickly. And that's the other thing, Josh. I think for someone who worked in cultural change in a big four consulting firm for 15 years, I have seen organisations spend enormous amounts of money and time and effort on cultural transformation programs, and they don't work. But this does, and it works quickly. And I think we were not prepared for how quick and how simple and how much it would change the conversation overnight in organisations. So it's why we built it, and it's working, and we're really super excited.
Congratulations. It's incredible. I love how rigorous it is. I love that you described that almost like the dip. Have you ever seen that idea in like motivation? Seth Godin wrote a book called The Dip, and it's like you're motivated at the start because it's
Mm,
easy, but then
mm,
the motivation dips down, and that's when people quit jobs, relationships, programs, diets, goals, because
yeah,
motivation's up, and then motivation they go, oh, this is hard, and then it dips. You've got the anti-dip. You've
yeah,
got the increase in reporting, which is actually what's happening because you're actually capturing it, and then you see the positive dip, which is
mm,
I'm guessing that behavior
mm,
change and the corrections.
yeah.
I
Now,
love that you say the solution can be simple.
solution can be simple. And I'm not for a moment am I naive enough to think that you can compare a 700 resident college with a 50,000 student university, but the principles are the same. The
Yeah.
principles are the same. And when you're dealing with technology, scale is just scale. It's not whether you've got one user or 100,000 users, it doesn't matter. Scale is scale.
Yeah.
But gee, I tell you what, when you've got something that's had such extraordinary impact and impact on prevention, it's changing cultures in organizations and changing it quickly. Why on earth would you settle for anything less would be my question. I suppose for Shay and I and for our whole team, because it's not just us, we've got a
Yeah,
team,
of
amazing,
course.
amazing, largely very young whippersnapper gurus, clever bots that work with us. We're just on a mission now. We're not going to stop until RespectX has become part of our national language. We want everyone to have access to a safe reporting tool so that we can just change the conversation. And I think it's really easy when you get into this we're building technology or universities are responding to the code or people are doing their do. We're all wrapped up in our world. But actually, if you step back and think, what's this all about? One woman in Australia is murdered by an intimate or former intimate partner every week. Like one woman in Australia. And it's mind blowing. And
Yeah.
to not think that there's a link between the behaviour that we accept in our workplace
Work.
or in our university or our college, the things that we let slide, the jokes that we make, the times we don't stand up, to think that there's no link between that and actually a really raw statistic like that is just
Mm.
sad and naive. Like, of course, those
Yeah.
things are linked. It's about culturally what we stand for. And I think one of the things that I remember Shay being amazed early on when we very first launched RespectX, and we launched it into one of our very first clients was an AFL football club, and there was such positive feedback from that organisation. And Shay spent a fair bit of time unpacking what was it that people responded to, what were they loving about the platform the most, and there was this really strong theme of because it's the right thing to do. And so I think there is this really powerful weaponry that higher education leaders have, which is all those young voices that are in their armies because they want to be the generation that stops this stuff. They really do. So my kind of, it's not that you've asked me, Josh, but if you were going to say to me, what would your word of advice be to a university?
I was leading you there, but this is great. You interview you, Sally. This is all you know the questions that you should be asked.
What would your advice be? I would say my advice to
Of
any
course it
higher
is.
education leader who's thinking, oh gosh, what should we do? What are we going to do about this code? My advice would be talk to your students, engage them in the conversation, consult with them. And my advice to any student would be go and rattle the doors, bang on the windows, rattle those chains, insert yourself into that conversation. This is for you, and you should be demanding better opportunities to make reports, better, more seamless, more sophisticated abilities to communicate when something's not okay and to get an outcome. You should be demanding to see real data, real prevalence data, and how it's tracking, and real trust and safety data and how that's tracking. You should be demanding it. It shouldn't be something that you are grateful to receive. It should be an expectation. Yeah, that would be the thing that I would encourage everyone to do is get yourself in this conversation and start demanding what is out there and what is available.
Absolutely. When I first reached out to you, I think I sent you a snippet of something that you said, which I just loved, and it was the only two metrics that matter are that safety and trust go up and that prevalence goes down.
Mm,
And good numbers going up, bad numbers going down. Respect X, the letter x.com.au. If you are in the university space, going to the University Colleges Australia social media account, they shared a whole lot of excerpts from Sally's recent presentation, late 2025. Sally Calder on LinkedIn sharing all her work and all the great places that she's being in. It's looking like places are opening their doors. I'm seeing you speak at high tables. I'm seeing you speak right in there in front of the students, which is not only cool to get the message out there and it's incredibly important work, but I bet it's really cool to have someone who spent 20 years in government. I won't list all the years. Previous guests have said, Josh, stop telling me how many years I've done things. But like you've someone who's done amazing things who cares about them is what I'm trying to say. That it would have been so easy for you to ride off into the sunset with KPMG, get a big director role, sit on a half dozen boards, which I know you do anyway. You do amazing stuff, but it would have been so easy to not do the hard stuff. So I just want to give you some flowers at the end of this of saying you're doing the hard stuff and
Oh,
you're on the ground speaking to 18, 19, 17 year olds. And I can only imagine that they love that, right?
they take more notice of me than my own children do, so I'm excited about
So that's the real purpose we do the work. We figured it out, Sally. 57 minutes in. It's no, I love it. They're
I think, Josh, it is a really sweet spot to be in. And I was one of those people that never knew what I wanted to do. That thing about, oh, I don't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't want to do that. I thought I wanted to work in politics. I didn't want to do that. I never really knew what I wanted to do. I didn't really plan to be a partner at KPMG. That happened, but I never really knew what I wanted to do. And then really it was a light bulb moment for me when I looked backwards and thought, got all the things that I've done in my career, they've all been fundamentally about leveling the playing field and trying to create a fair go for everyone. And that's why those numbers, those reporting numbers were so powerful for me because I didn't want to spend 40 years at work not having made any difference. So when we decided, actually, you know what, we can build this and we can focus on that problem, suddenly, when I looked back, that 40-year career made sense because every road has led me exactly to where I am now, which is together with Shay and our team to build a digital solution that will actually solve this problem, solve it once and for all. And that's really what we want to do. And yeah, I guess it didn't occur to me to ride off on the sunset. Some days I think about that and think, gosh, that'd be nice. But no, we're on the journey. We're loving it too much and we're not stopping anytime soon.
Sally Calder. Thanks for coming on Better Student Leaders and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you.